the billionaire made a promise to the Maid's toddler. 20 years later, he came back for one reason. He stood at the door of a house worth less than his watch. He hadn't called ahead. He hadn't sent anyone. He came alone, in a plain gray coat, no driver waiting at the curb. Just a man standing in the November cold, staring at a blue door he hadn't seen in 20 years. His name was Callum Reeve, 44 years old, one of the 15 wealthiest men in the country. His face had been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. He had built hospitals, funded clean water projects across 4 continents, and once turned down a Senate appointment because he didn't want the attention. And right now, his hand was shaking as he reached for the doorbell. Inside that house lived a young woman named Nadia. She was 23 years old, a pre-med student in her final year. She had grown up without a father, raised by a mother who worked herself to exhaustion so that Nadia could have every opportunity she hadn't. Nadia had no idea who Callum Reeve was. But Callum Reeve had thought about her almost every day for 20 years. Not in a strange way. Not in a selfish way. In the way a person thinks about a promise they made in a quiet moment, one they weren't sure they'd ever be able to keep. He pressed the bell. Inside, a light turned on. And here's what you need to understand before the door opens. This story did not begin 20 years ago. It began long before that. It began in a marble-floored mansion on a rainy Tuesday morning when a 3-year-old girl with mismatched socks wandered into Callum's home office and asked him why he looked so sad. He didn't know she could see it. He didn't know anyone could. But she did. And that one question, from a child who could barely pronounce her own name, changed everything about the man he would eventually become.
How?
Stay with me. In 2003, Callum Reeve was 34 years old and worth $800 million. He had a penthouse in Manhattan that occupied the entire 42nd floor. He had a weekend home in Connecticut with 12 bedrooms, a wine cellar, and a pool that nobody used. He had a personal chef, a driver, 3 assistants, and a security team that rotated on 8-hour shifts. What he did not have was a single person who knew how he took his coffee. His assistant, Marcus, knew he ordered a double espresso every morning. But Callum actually drank it with a small pour of oat milk and 1 spoon of brown sugar. He just never corrected Marcus because it felt like too intimate a detail to share with someone on payroll. That was the kind of man he was. He had trained himself to need nothing from anyone. His childhood had taught him that lesson early. His father was a distant, achievement-obsessed financier who measured love in quarterly performance reviews. His mother left when Callum was 9. She sent birthday cards until he was 14, then those stopped too. He raised himself on ambition and silence, and by the time he was 30, he had convinced himself he preferred it that way. The Connecticut house was his refuge. He went there most weekends, not to relax, but to think. To walk the grounds at 5 in the morning when the mist was still low and nobody expected anything from him. He would stand at the edge of the property where the lawn met a small line of oak trees and just breathe. Those were the only moments he felt real. The rest of the time he was performing. Performing confidence in boardrooms. Performing generosity at charity galas. Performing contentment in the rare interview where someone asked him something personal. He had answers ready for all of it. Clean, polished answers that revealed nothing. He had no close friends. He had allies, colleagues, and acquaintances. He had an ex-fiancée named Caroline who once told him, the night she left, that being with him felt like loving someone through a glass wall. He had nodded, calmly, and asked his assistant to arrange movers for her things the following morning. He did not cry. He did not know how anymore. His Connecticut home was staffed by a small team. A groundskeeper who came 3 times a week, a driver on call, and a housekeeper named Gloria, who had worked for him for 4 years and was one of the few people in his life he genuinely respected, not because she was exceptional at her job, which she was, but because she never tried to impress him. She simply showed up, did her work, went home. He found that more comforting than he ever admitted. In the fall of 2003, Gloria mentioned that she needed to bring her daughter to work for a short time. Her usual childcare had fallen through. It would only be temporary. She apologized 3 times before she even asked. Callum said yes before she finished the sentence. He didn't think much about it. He should have known then that nothing stays small forever. Gloria Mendez was 27 years old. She was not supposed to be a housekeeper. She had studied accounting for 2 years at a community college in New Jersey, and she had been good at it, methodical, precise, good with patterns. But when her daughter was born, and the girl's father chose to disappear rather than become a father, Gloria's path changed overnight. She did not talk about the father. Not to anyone. Especially not to her daughter. She had learned, quickly, that bitterness was a weight she could not afford to carry and still be a good mother. So she put it down. And she worked. She took the housekeeping job because it paid well and allowed flexibility on days when Nadia was sick or needed her. She was good at the work, careful, thorough, invisible in the way that good household staff learns to be. She anticipated needs before they were spoken. She moved through rooms like she belonged to them, without claiming any of them. Callum noticed her efficiency. He didn't notice much else, because Gloria did not invite attention. But Nadia was a different story. Nadia Mendez was 3 years and 4 months old when she first arrived at the Connecticut house. She had her mother's dark eyes and a gap between her 2 front teeth and an opinion about absolutely everything. She wore 1 pink sock and 1 purple sock on the first day, and when Callum's assistant quietly mentioned this to Gloria, as though it might be embarrassing, Nadia looked up and said, very seriously, I know. I pick them. That was the thing about Nadia. She was 3, but she had a kind of quiet authority about her that children rarely have. Not bratty. Not demanding. Just present. Completely, fully present in whatever room she walked into. Gloria set up a small corner of the kitchen with coloring books and a few toys. She told Nadia, very firmly, to stay there and not bother anyone. Nadia lasted 45 minutes. Then she appeared in the doorway of Callum's home office, holding a crayon drawing she had made, her socks mismatched, her hair in 2 uneven braids her mother had rushed through that morning. She looked at Callum for a long moment. Callum looked back. You have a lot of books, she said. Yes. Do you read them all? Most of them. She considered this. My mom reads to me every night, even when she's tired. Something in his chest moved. He wasn't sure what to do with it, so he said, That's very good of her. Nadia nodded, satisfied, and held up her drawing. It was a house with a big yellow sun and several stick figures of varying heights. This is my family, she said. He studied it. Who's the tallest one? She pointed. That's the daddy I'm going to have someday. She said it plainly. No sadness. No complaint. Just simple, open certainty, the way children believe in things they haven't seen yet. Callum did not know what to say, so he just looked at the drawing for a long time. And later that evening, after Gloria had taken Nadia home, he sat in that office in the dark and thought about a stick figure in a crayon drawing, a placeholder for someone who hadn't arrived yet. He thought about it longer than he wanted to admit. It was supposed to be 2 weeks. Gloria's regular childcare situation would be resolved by then. Everything would return to normal. But Nadia got a cold that kept her out of daycare. Then the childcare provider had a family emergency. Then Callum, without fully realizing what he was doing, told Gloria not to worry about finding another arrangement. She's not in the way, he said, which was the most dishonest thing he'd said in years. She was entirely in the way. In his office, in his kitchen, in his routine. She had opinions about which coffee mug was his favorite. She rearranged 3 of his books by color because she thought it looked prettier. She asked him, with full sincerity, why his house didn't have any pictures of people in it. You have pictures of buildings, she said. Buildings can't hug you. He had no answer for that. Their interactions became a rhythm neither of them planned. In the mornings, While Gloria cleaned the upper floors, Nadia would appear at the kitchen island where Callum ate breakfast. She'd sit on the tall stool, legs swinging, eating the toast his chef prepared for her, narrating her thoughts about whatever she'd dreamed about or noticed or decided. He began to listen. Not politely. Actually listen. She told him that clouds looked like sleeping animals. She told him that her mother cried sometimes at night when she thought Nadia was asleep, but Nadia always heard. She said her mother never cried in the daytime, only at night, because that's when you can be sad if you have to be. Callum stopped eating when she said that. He looked at this child, 3 years old, gap-toothed, mismatched socks, and felt something shift behind his sternum. He said, "Your mom is very brave." Nadia nodded. "I know. I'm going to be brave too. I think you already are." She smiled at him then. The full, unguarded kind of smile that children give when they trust you completely. And Callum, who had not been trusted completely by anyone in more years than he could count, felt it land somewhere deep and undefended inside him. It was a Thursday afternoon about 6 weeks in when it happened for the first time. Callum had been on a long call. It had not gone well. He came out of his office rubbing the back of his neck, exhausted, and found Nadia sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor with her coloring book. She looked up, studied his face. "You had a bad day," she said. "I'm fine. You look like my friend Tommy when his feelings got too big." He sat down on the floor beside her. He didn't plan to. He just did. She handed him a crayon. Orange. He didn't know what to do with it, so he just held it. "You can color with me," she said. "It helps." They sat on the floor of his $60 million estate, and he colored inside the lines of a cartoon elephant while a 3-year-old gave him quiet instructions. It was the most peaceful he had felt in years. Then she leaned into his side, the way children lean without thinking, assuming warmth is always available. "Can I call you Daddy?" she asked, eyes still on her coloring book. His whole body went still. He looked at her small hand gripping the purple crayon. The uneven braids. The mismatched socks. He knew he should say no. Gently, kindly, but no. He knew that. He said nothing. Which, in its own way, was an answer she took as yes. From that Thursday forward, she called him Daddy. Not loudly. Not in front of her mother, who would have corrected it immediately. But in those quiet in-between moments, when it was just the two of them, she used the word easily, naturally, like it had always been true. And Callum let her. He knew he shouldn't. He knew this arrangement had an expiration date. He knew that attachments of this kind, between a billionaire and a housekeeper's child, could only end one of two ways, quietly or badly. He knew all of this. And he let her call him Daddy anyway. What he did not know was that Gloria had started to notice something. Not the word Nadia used, not yet, but the change in her daughter. The way Nadia talked about the Connecticut house like it was a second home. The way she asked, on weekday mornings when they weren't going, if they were going to Callum's house today. The light in her eyes when the answer was yes. Gloria recognized that light. She had seen it before when Nadia's grandmother, her own mother, used to come to visit. That particular brightness that meant a child had found a safe, warm place to rest. And Gloria began to feel afraid. Not of Callum. She trusted him more than she trusted most people. She was afraid of what would happen when this ended, because all things ended. She just didn't know yet that the ending she was afraid of was already coming, and it wasn't the one she imagined. In November 2003, 8 weeks after Nadia first appeared in his office, Callum received a visit from his financial partner, a man named Gregory Holt. Gregory was older than Callum by 10 years. Methodical, brilliant in the particular way that people who lack empathy often are, unencumbered by emotion, clear-eyed about cost and profit, efficient. He arrived at the Connecticut house on a Saturday morning with a folder and a proposal. The proposal was straightforward. Callum's investment group had an opportunity to acquire a portfolio of low-income residential properties in 3 New Jersey counties. The plan was to buy, renovate to a higher market standard, and release at significantly increased rates. The profit margin was exceptional. The catch, though Gregory did not use that word, was that the current tenants would need to be relocated. All of them. Over 400 families. Given 60 days' notice and a modest assistance payment. It's legal, Gregory said. I know, Callum said. It's a clean deal. I know. Gregory set the folder on the table. Your signature is the last one needed. The other partners are ready to move. This window is small, Callum. If we don't close by end of month, Ericsson's group takes it. Callum didn't answer right away. He looked out the window. The lawn was frost-covered. A single crow sat on the fence post at the edge of the property. He thought about the numbers in that folder. He thought about 400 families. He thought about what 60 days meant when you had nowhere to go. I need the weekend, he said. Gregory left the folder. That evening, Gloria was finishing up in the kitchen. Nadia was asleep on the couch in the sitting room, a blanket tucked around her. Callum stood in the doorway watching the child sleep. Gloria came up beside him. She didn't say anything at first. Then, quietly, she loves it here. I know. It scares me a little. She paused. She doesn't have a lot of places where she feels this safe. Callum didn't respond. But something about her words lodged in him. The phrase, a place where she feels safe. He went back to the folder that night. He opened it. He looked at the addresses of the properties. One of them was on a street he recognized. He knew it because Gloria had mentioned it, offhandedly weeks ago, describing the neighborhood where she grew up, where her mother still lived, where two of her cousins raised their children. He closed the folder. He sat in the dark for a very long time. Monday morning came. Callum called Gregory. I'm close, he said. Give me until Wednesday. Gregory agreed. He had expected some hesitation. Callum always thought longer than necessary, in Gregory's view. But he always signed. On Tuesday, Callum met with his legal team. He asked about the displacement provisions. They were airtight. 60 days. Required by law. They had covered it carefully. He nodded. He took notes. He asked practical questions about timelines and liability. His team exchanged a look that said he's in. He had the document on his desk Wednesday morning. His pen was in his hand. And then his phone buzzed. A photo from Gloria. She hadn't sent it to him intentionally. She had sent it to a wrong number by accident, realized her mistake, and sent a follow-up. Sorry, wrong person. But he'd already seen it. It was Nadia, sitting on Gloria's mother's front step, wearing a bright red coat, holding up a leaf the size of her face. Grinning. Behind her, the address was visible on the wall of the building. Unit 4B. The same building in the folder on his desk. He put the pen down. He did not pick it up again. But he also did not call Gregory to decline. He sat in silence. He let the deadline tick. His assistant came in at 4 o'clock. Gregory's office called. They need an answer. Callum said nothing. Should I tell them you need more time? Tell them I'll call in the morning. He went home. He sat in the dark. And the audience, watching him, might have thought he would sign. Might have thought that was where this was going. That money would win. That it always does. But they hadn't heard what happened next. He had barely slept. Thursday morning. He was in the kitchen. Coffee untouched. The document was in his briefcase. His driver was waiting. Gloria arrived at 8. She was earlier than usual. She looked tired, he noticed that. Nadia was with her, bundled in the red coat from the photo, holding a paper bag. She wanted to bring you something, Gloria said, looking almost embarrassed. I told her you were busy. Nadia walked to the kitchen island. She set the paper bag down with great seriousness. I made you a sandwich, she said. He looked at her. Me and Grandma. She let me put the cheese in. Nadia paused. It's a lot of cheese. I like cheese. Callum looked inside the bag. A crooked, overstuffed sandwich wrapped in foil, slightly squashed on one side. "Thank you," he said, quietly. Nadia studied his face the way she always did, that complete, undistracted attention that children give before they learn to look away from uncomfortable things. "You're still sad," she said. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" He didn't answer. She pulled herself up onto the stool beside him. She leaned her elbows on the counter. She looked at him sideways with those dark eyes. "Daddy," she said, soft. No performance in it. Just the word, given to him like a gift she'd already decided he deserved. His jaw tightened. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" He didn't know why she asked that. He didn't know what she sensed, what children sense in adults when the air changes. But she asked it like she already knew the answer depended on him. "Are we going to be okay?" 3 years old. A paper bag with a crooked cheese sandwich. Mismatched socks. Gap-toothed, wide-eyed, trusting him completely. "We." She had said we. He looked at this child who had wandered into his office 2 months ago and rearranged his books and colored beside him on the floor and called him by a name he hadn't earned and given it to him anyway, generously, the way children give things, freely, without condition, without wondering if you deserve it. And for the first time in more years than he could count, Callum Reeve felt something break open inside him. Not shatter. Not collapse. Open. His eyes burned. He pressed 2 fingers to his mouth and looked away toward the window, and Gloria, who had been quietly wiping down the counter across the room, stopped. She watched him. He couldn't speak. Nadia reached over and patted his arm twice. Gently. The way she'd seen her mother comfort her. "It's okay," she said. "You can be sad. My mom says nighttime is for sad, but I think daytime is okay too." He laughed. Once. Broken. Then he reached over and held her small hand in both of his, and he held it like it was the most valuable thing he had ever touched in his life. Because in that moment it was. He called Gregory that afternoon. But first he went for a walk. He walked to the edge of the property, to the line of oak trees, where he stood on frost-covered ground and let himself feel something he had been holding at arm's length for 30 years. When Callum was 9, his mother left. He had told that story before, in the clean version. She moved away. They lost touch. It was a long time ago. The real version was that he had watched her pack. He had stood in the hallway of their house and watched her put things into boxes, and he had not cried or begged or spoken, because even at 9, he had understood, somehow, that she had already made her decision. And he did not want to be the thing that made her feel guilty for it. He had spent his entire adult life making himself easy to leave, building walls so perfectly disguised as floors that no one realized they were enclosed. He had let Caroline go without a word. He had let friendships fade. He had turned down the Senate appointment not because he hated attention, but because attention would have meant accountability, would have meant being seen. And being seen meant someone could decide he wasn't worth staying for. That was the calculation he had made, silently, for 30 years. Until a 3-year-old wandered into his office with mismatched socks and asked him why he looked sad. She had not asked permission to care about him. She had simply done it. And now he understood what was at stake, not just for 400 families in those buildings. Not just for Gloria and her daughter. For him. Because if he signed that document, he would be choosing, again, to protect himself by not feeling anything. By reducing human lives to line items. By being the version of himself that could never be left because he never truly arrived. He was so tired of not arriving. He called Gregory at 3 in the afternoon. "I'm not signing," he said. Silence. "Callum. I'm out of the deal. You can proceed with the other partners or restructure, but my name isn't going on it." More silence. Gregory's voice, when it returned, was controlled. "You understand what you're walking away from?" "Yes. This is a $300 million opportunity." "I know what it is." "You're going to explain this to the board?" "I'm going to tell them I changed my mind." That happens. Deals fall through. He paused. I'll take the reputation hit. Gregory hung up without another word. Callum stood there with his phone in his hand. His hands were steady. He felt lighter than he had in years. It cost him, genuinely. His relationship with Gregory did not recover. Two of his other investment partners stepped back from future deals, citing unreliability. There was a piece in a financial publication 2 months later suggesting Callum Reeve was losing his edge. He read it over breakfast. He ate his toast. He drank his coffee without milk and brown sugar, the way he actually took it, which he had started ordering for himself. He set the paper down. He called Gloria. "I'd like to do something for Nadia," he said. "Not charity. Not a gift. I want to set up an education fund, properly, through a trust, so that whatever she wants to study, wherever she wants to go, it's there for her." Gloria was quiet for a long time. "Why?" she finally asked. He thought about how to answer. "Because someone should have done something like that for you," he said. "And they didn't. And that's not a mistake I want to keep repeating." Gloria didn't say anything else, but he heard her crying. Not the nighttime kind. The other kind. He did not fall in love with Gloria that winter. That's not what the story is. What happened was slower and more important than that. What happened was that two people who had each, in their own way, stopped expecting warmth from the world, began very carefully to offer it to each other. He fixed the broken gate latch on Gloria's rented house, the one she had mentioned once that her landlord kept ignoring. He showed up on a Saturday morning with tools and the admission that he had no idea what he was doing, and they spent 2 hours figuring it out together while Nadia sat on the porch offering extremely confident guidance. Gloria brought him soup when he mentioned, very offhandedly, that he was coming down with something. She left it on his doorstep with a note that said only, "Brown sugar goes in the coffee, not the soup. Don't ruin it." He laughed for a full minute at that note. He kept it. Nadia continued to call him Daddy when it was just the three of them. Gloria eventually heard it. She froze. Started to correct it. Callum met her eyes over Nadia's head. He shook his head. Slightly. Gently. Gloria's expression was complicated, uncertain, protective, searching. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she let it go. It wasn't a declaration of anything. It was just a recognition that something real had grown here, quietly, in the background of an arrangement that was supposed to be temporary. Something that didn't have a clean name, but deserved to be treated carefully. By spring, Callum had converted a room in the Connecticut house into a proper play space. Not ostentatious. A small table at the right height. Bookshelves she could reach. A selection of good crayons. Nadia inspected it very seriously. "You need a picture of people," she told him. He had one framed photo now. On his desk. The three of them at the edge of the property, by the oak trees. His assistant had taken it, accidentally, one afternoon when he'd brought documents to sign. Callum was looking at the camera. Gloria was looking at Nadia. Nadia was looking at something off-frame. A bird, he thought. It was imperfect. Off-center. Not the kind of photo a stylist would arrange. He thought it was the best photo he had ever owned. 20 years later, Callum stood at the blue door. The door opened. A young woman stood there, dark eyes, tall, a stethoscope around her neck. She had been studying. She looked at him with polite confusion. "Can I help you?" He had rehearsed this moment many times. Had planned careful, measured words. Instead, he just said, "You probably don't remember me. I knew your mother a long time ago. And I knew you when you were very small. I made a promise that I wanted to keep, and I wasn't sure how to reach you, and then your mother," his voice caught. "I was sorry to hear about your mother." "I'm very sorry." Nadia's expression shifted. "Gloria Mendez was one of the finest people I ever knew," he said. "And she raised the best person I've ever met, even at 3 years old." Nadia stared at him. Then something moved across her face. A door opening behind her eyes. "You colored with me," she said. Slowly. like pulling something up from very deep. On the floor. You held a crayon like you'd never used one before. He laughed. His eyes were bright. Orange, she said. You picked orange. You handed it to me. She opened the door wider. Do you want to come in? She asked. And that was all. No dramatic reunion. No flood of answers. Just a door opening. Just two people standing at the beginning of something they would have to build slowly, carefully, without any guarantee of how it would look when it was done. But then, that's how the best things are built. Some people come into our lives for a reason they can't name yet. A child who wanders into an office. A question asked without thinking. A sandwich made with too much cheese. We don't always recognize the moments that change us when they happen. We only see them later, looking back from some point in the future, thinking, that was it. That was the moment I started becoming someone I actually wanted to be. If you believe in stories like that, stories about the unexpected people who reshape us and the long, quiet work of becoming someone worthy of the trust they placed in you, then you're in the right place. This channel exists for those stories. The ones that stay with you. We'd love to stay with you too. If you're new here, so please subscribe to my channel Still Human Stories, press bell icon to upcoming stories.